Life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you respond to it. We can't control life. We can't control circumstances. Sometimes we cannot control our environments, but what we can control is how we respond. And the more you get into your word, the more you pray, the more you seek God, you become more like God. So you have God-like responses. And when you have God-like responses, the outcomes are a lot more favorable unto you.
You are here. Welcome to the Purpose Finder podcast. This is the show where we uncover why you are truly here and, more importantly, how to make it your reality. My father, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, said the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but life without purpose. And research further shows that people with a strong sense of purpose are 2.4 times more likely to feel fulfilled. Each week, I sit down with extraordinary guests, entrepreneurs, artists, thought leaders who are boldly living their why. We dive deep into their journeys, the struggles they've overcome, their breakthroughs, and the lessons that can help you do the same. I am your beautiful host, Charissa Monroe Wilborn, and we're about to explore the mindsets, tools, and strategies to help you live a life with purpose, passion, and legacy. Are you ready? Let's go and dive into the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another great and incredible episode of the Purpose Finder podcast, where you know our mission is simple: to inspire you to find and uncover your life's purpose and to live a life full of what three things: meaning, fulfillment, and significance. Why? Because we all crave belonging. No one wants to feel unfulfilled, and we are all searching, asking that big question: why in the world am I here? But I hope you allow your search to end right here on the podcast. I am your host, Charissa Monroe Wilborn, and today I have an incredible honor of sitting down with someone who isn't just thinking about it. He doesn't even just talk about it or help others with it, but he is living out his own purpose and calling in life, and he's doing it boldly. We're going to talk about his journey. You're going to hear about his lessons along the way, some adversities, but how he made it back to the mountaintop. Help me welcome Mr. Walter Mendenhall. Walt, thank you so much for
Man,
being
thank you for
here.
having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to get to meet you. You came highly recommended. Your reputation precedes you. And so I thought that it would be a great opportunity for the audience to hear from someone who's doing a great service to the world. And even though along the way there was journeys, there was a journey full of stories, full of adversities, full of challenges. Here you are at the mountaintop, still serving everyone else below and actually bringing people with you. So
Thank you.
please, they don't want to hear from me, but they do want to hear from you, who you are, where you're from, kind of what you're doing. You're doing a lot of things. So I would like for you to share with the audience.
So my name is Walter Mendenhall, originally from Chicago. Currently, I run a social enterprise. I'm a social entrepreneur, and I run a social enterprise called the Male Mogul Initiative. The mission of the Male Mogul Initiative is to positively transform the way young men live and lead in their communities through leadership, entrepreneurship, and workforce development. Essentially, what the Male Mogul seeks to do is solve what I call three foundational problems here in Chicago. According to UIC Inner City Studies Institute, 45% of African American young men ages 18 to 24 are not in school or working. Um, 80% of capital needs for Black and Brown entrepreneurs in Chicago go unmet each year, which is 146 million. And the third one, 80% of homicide victims are African American. So these are three problems that have affected me, all three. And what I wanted to do was to be a solution as opposed to somebody complaining.
And so what is it that what event or experience or thing happened beyond just it affecting you that said, I need to start this and start it now?
Yeah, so I remember working at a local nonprofit on the west side of Chicago, and I went into a career day at Douglas High School. And at Douglas High School, I met a young man that was awesome. Great young man, honor roll student, basketball player, very well respected in his school. But he sold drugs to get the things that he wanted. And I thought to myself, how many young men in this city and really around the nation have the gift, skills, and talents to be successful legal entrepreneurs, but don't have the opportunity or exposure. So the Male Mogul started with 5 kids at a local church and has blossomed to serving over 3,000 young people, producing over 200 plus jobs, numerous awards. We were featured on Good Morning America. We were a 2022 Chicago Innovation Award winner, 2023 MIT Solve semifinalist. And in 2024, we opened up Chicago's first small business incubator for youth and young adults called CoLab. And we recently acquired a financial technology company that we help young men to become commercial and business loan brokers.
I think what you're doing is so astounding, so amazing, especially when you are addressing the problems of the youth in our nation and, hopefully at large around the world. But I also know that, you also come from a background, if you will, that also made you at risk.
Mhm.
And so please let's share with the audience what your growing up looked like and
Yes.
your household.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think, as I'm a man of faith, and I feel what a story and kind of like my background that I mostly and the person that I really relate with is Moses. So essentially, from the south side of Chicago, spent my early childhood there. I had a mom and dad. They were married, but they divorced when I was at a young age, and I spent majority time with my mom. But the funny thing that happened was like during my early childhood. I went from the south side of Chicago to Skokie, Illinois, which, if you ever, in Chicago, Chicago is probably the most segregated city in America. And a lot of times when you're from the south side, you don't go to the north side, let alone the north suburbs. The north suburbs, or what they call the North Shore, is a very affluent area. And I don't know, kind of how I got there, but my mom landed a job there, and we ended up moving to Skokie, Illinois. As a single mother, my mom worked a few jobs to make ends meet, to make sure we had a better life. And eventually, my mom, could no longer support us and actually took a position as a youth minister back on the south side, and we ended up living with a different family. So I lived with a white family uh, for a portion of my life, and I would say that was very divine, because a lot of things that I learned in that community with that family, I apply today in what I do.
Mm. Can can you tell us some of those things you learned that was so
Yes.
impactful?
So when I first moved to Skokie, we lived in a building, and Skokie is a traditionally Jewish community. But
Mm.
during that time, a lot of immigrants from around the world started moving into certain areas. So we lived in a large apartment complex, and it was people from all over the world that lived in that apartment complex. So I saw people from Haiti, I saw people from India, I saw people from Nigeria, Jamaica, uh, Russia, Ukraine. Like, I seen people from all around the world, and what I saw and what I really realized, that poverty wasn't necessarily how much money you had; it was a mindset.
Mm.
And what I saw about these immigrant communities, it wasn't color, because I saw people of so many different colors. It was the mindset that they had. And what I learned there was collective economics. I would see a family move in to this, 2-bedroom apartment. In 3, 4 years, they'd be buying a house in the same neighborhood. And we would be in the same place. I'm just like, what is it that they're doing that we're not doing? And
Mm.
what I realized was they were working together collectively for a common goal. And you could do more or get farther together than you can do apart. And that is one thing that I learned living in there, as opposed to going back. And all my family's from the south side of Chicago. My family isn't rich or anything like that. A lot of times, a lot of them came from poverty. So, I just realized that it wasn't necessarily systematic, even though that had something to do with it. It was all about your mindset. And that was really something that really stuck with me. And living with that white family, what I learned too was that the husband was a business owner, and he owned a business. And each night we would have dinner at a dinner table. I never had, dinner at a dinner table except on Thanksgivings and
Right.
holidays. But we would eat dinner, and he would talk about business, and he would talk about um, essentially how to manage people. And I didn't know what he was doing at that time, but what I realized, a lot of those lessons, a lot of those things, I actually took in, and it has helped me to grow my organization.
Absolutely. And so when you think about or you talk about the husband of that family, it brings me to a father. And for
Yes.
you, your mom was the primary parent. And so how was it growing up without a father? Do you say it had a positive or a negative impact or any impact at all on who you are today?
I would say it made me the person I am today, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was a positive impact. I think for me was that as I look back at it, and this is from years of therapy, one thing that I struggled with was validation, and essentially self-worth. And if I were to think about the root of that problem, it would be the lack of a father in my life that created a hole for affirmation. And what football and sports did for a temporary time was, kind of give me a false affirmation of who I was. And, I had the cheers and I had the validation of people. And that essentially was the root of my, I guess you can say, self esteem. But, as we, kind of maybe putting the cart before the horse, but once sports wasn't going good in my life and football wasn't going good in my life, nothing was going good. And it got to a point where, I was even contemplating suicide. And I remember laying in my room one day and I said, God, if you're really real, I need to know right now, because I don't know if I'm going to make it to the next day. And I remember a presence coming in, like, and just feeling hugged like you would hug a newborn baby, and I had the most peaceful sleep I ever had in my life. And what I realized when I woke up the next morning was that even though my situation didn't change, sports wasn't going right, whatever it was, my attitude about the situation changed. And I realized I was here for a bigger purpose, and didn't know what that was at the time. But um, I just had a different outlook on my life. And that kind of created the journey of self discovery and purpose outside of sports.
Mm, so much I want to unpack there because you mentioned therapy.
Hmm.
At what point in your life were you introduced, whether someone introduced it to you or you became an adult and recognized I need to go and see someone? At what point did you introduce therapy into your journey for healing or for help or support?
It's a funny story. So this is another kind of divine story, and I wish I could take credit for it, but it was essentially God. I remember coming in. I was at the club, and I remember coming into my room, and I heard a voice say that, you are just like your father. and no one put his business out there, but he was in them streets. He was hanging out. He was doing his thing. He was a clubber, and I looked to see if it was like who said that, and it was something that kind of shook me a little bit. And a week later, there was a somebody introduced me or asked me to come on this men's retreat called the Crucible Project, and I was on the fence on whether I was going to go or not. And my girlfriend, now wife, but was my girlfriend at the time, said, I think this is something you should go to. And I ended up going, and it was really a breakthrough moment for me because essentially that weekend helped me to confront my shadow and essentially what was keeping me from being my best self. And after that weekend, I saw, therapy, whether it's group therapy, personal therapy, and I did it for years, and it was essentially the foundation to what the man that I needed to be in order to do the work that I'm doing now.
Is it a journey? Is it a choice that you recommend to other men? Because you don't find a lot of men, especially your African American men or your black men. You don't find a lot of men just welcoming the idea of going to therapy and sitting on somebody's couch and spilling out all my emotional guts. Is it something that you recommend?
I do recommend it, but I also recommend you got to find the right person. You got to find the right group. And I say, you know, I started out with group therapy because I don't know if I was ready to, just go one on one. I don't know if I would have liked the person. I didn't know what it meant. It was negative stigma. The stigmas are better now than they were back, when I was, it's more acceptable. Um, but I just say you got to find the right place, the right group. And I would advise if you don't want to do personal therapy, start with group therapy and then, kind of work your way towards.
And then why do you recommend it? Because once you find the right person, no problem. You're good, you're set. But why do you recommend it, especially for men? Because it's not men. There's a stigma of men expressing their feelings. We shouldn't even have these feelings and emotions, much less go and talk about them. But how impactful was it for you as a man, a black man living in America, going through the issues that you had that you didn't even know you had until recently, before the therapy started? How impactful and important was it for you to say, you know what, this may not be sexy, this may not be masculine, but I need to do it.
Um, I would say the benefits are immense. It's no, it's really you can't put a price tag to it.
Mhm.
Um, what therapy has done for me personally, it helped me to recognize the root of my problems. And once I recognized the root of my problems, I was able to properly process and deal with it.
Deal with it.
And I knew when things would trigger me, why they would trigger me. And I was able to have accountability. And a lot of times, men, we don't live with a lot of accountability. We want to hide. And in our toughness and us not wanting to communicate, we kind of hide from accountability and shield it as toxic, what I call toxic masculinity. And I was able to express myself in a way that, or communicate in a way that I wasn't able to before. I was able to get accountability for some of the things that I wanted to change about myself. And essentially, I had the tools to effectively deal with some of the hurt, the pain, and the triggers that I had.
Absolutely. And I think it's commendable to you, but also a very good push to a lot of other men who are listening, who are looking at you, who are seeing the toughness, who are tough themselves, and saying, yes, I'm hurting on the inside, but I'm supposed to be hard. I'm supposed to be tough. I'm supposed to be the one that doesn't shed the tears and doesn't have the feelings. But it is important for men to, just how we tell everybody else, to put yourself first, put yourselves first. um yes, you have to provide, but if you're no longer around, or if you're not here with a 100% complete stable mind, then you're still no use to the family you're providing for. You're still no use to the family you're preparing for in case you don't have one. And so I think it's important, especially when you become aware with, like you say, your triggers, when you become aware of your emotions, when you become aware of the tools that you have, and then you become just aware of how you can respond and not react, or how you should react if that happens. Or it just makes for a much easier, peaceful, just flow of life. And men do a lot. I have a husband. I have a husband who's a father, about to be a father of two. I know that men carry a heavy, heavy, heavy burden. And somewhere along the way, society said men should never say anything. We have our men who are teaching our boys, like you, who are mentoring young men. This is also good for them from this age, because they should know, the first thing fathers tells their sons is, you shouldn't be crying. Boys don't cry, men don't cry. And so they, from that tender age, they learn to just suck it all up. And throughout their entire life, they sucking it up, sucking it up, sucking it up, as opposed to expressing it. And there's a way to express. If you don't want to cry, no problem. But there's a way for you as a man or as a human to be able to express who you are. My husband and I were having a conversation earlier today because our daughter started preschool, and her first day was hard. It was hard and it was rough. So if it was hard for her, you know who else it was hard for, right?
Yep.
It was
You.
very hard and rough for me. And I'm there crying. And of course, we are 30 days into her being in school, so it's a lot better. So now we can talk about it. And he just laughs at me. I'm like, why are you laughing? Why didn't it affect you? And he's like, yeah, it affected him. He said it was sad to see her sad. But he said one of us gotta hold it together. We both can't be just crying off to the side. But and I understand, like you say, one of us got to be the strong one. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that he didn't feel the same. He just responded a certain way, or he just responded differently. And that was okay. That was acceptable. I at least want to know that you have some feelings. My God,
Yeah.
you know? Um, so thank you for sharing that and being transparent, because I think it's important for men to also see the importance of their emotions, but also just how to deal and manage them.
Yes.
And then you also mentioned, because you also talk about that period in college where suicide was a thing for you. And did that come pre NFL or post NFL? And I say NFL
That was
because,
pretty fail. So essentially, my dream was to play professional football,
mhm.
and
And you talked about football like it was just, oh, I just played football, I just played sports in high school. No, ladies and
it seemed like
gentlemen,
a
you're
different life.
looking at a
Yeah,
former NFL player, but
yeah,
I don't care how short it was.
yeah.
Let's
You
talk
know,
about it.
it just it seems like it was a different person. So that's why sometimes I don't, talk about it how some people would talk about it, but it's a time in my life that I'm appreciative of because it made me the person that I am today. So essentially, at the University of Illinois, that's where I played football. I really wasn't having the success that I thought I was going to have, and my identity was wrapped up in what I did and not necessarily who I was.
Mhm.
I didn't know who I was. I thought who I was what I did, and that was play football. So my affirmation, my self worth, my identity was in how I performed, and I wasn't getting the opportunity to perform. So that in turn turned into a very, very, very deep depression. And the
Mhm.
depression got so bad that I thought about taking my life. And that's when I kind of cried out to God, and He showed up in a way that I haven't even experienced since. I experienced God in other ways, but in that way that night, I never experienced God in that way. And after I woke up, man, I just realized I didn't know what it was. I didn't know who I was, but I knew two things. I took my faith more seriously, and I think that's where I kind of went into my adult faith and not my child faith. And I realized I was here for a bigger purpose than just to play football.
Mm. And I think it's so interesting for us to talk about that because, people think, especially the young men of today's generation, they think that if I could make it to the NFL, I've made it. That's the mecca of life. If I'm there, couldn't get no better than that. But I don't think they also understand what that type of lifestyle, what the type of commitment and discipline means, or what comes with that. And then for you, I don't even hear you saying, you just always wanted to be an NFL. Well, you said you wanted to play pro ball, but it was almost as though you wanted it because the validation that you would get from it, the nudge of having self worth that you would get from it is what you wanted. And so it also speaks to how long you were in it. I think you said you were just in the
2 years.
NFL for 2 years,
Yes.
and you gave it a term, and I asked you how why was it short lived, and you termed it as
Not for long. The NFL.
NFL means not for long. I thought it was so funny, but
Yeah.
I think because even it even reminds me of Deion Sanders. I talk about this a lot because you're talking about a really, really good football player who has won Super Bowls, and even him is saying, I was winning Super Bowls, I was playing in the World Series, but I didn't have two things. He didn't have peace, and he didn't have joy. I mean, by the time you make it to the Super Bowl, like that's the apex of your career. It could also be the apex of your life. Why aren't you happy? Why aren't you excited? Why aren't you just feeling fulfilled? And for him, it was none of that. There was no peace. There was no joy. Why do you think that is? Having been in the NFL, and you can't speak for him, but you can just kind of speak for yourself. Why do you think that this uh, idea of such things like sports is so over idolized. But then when we get there, we realize it's not all peaches and cream.
Yeah. I think, and I'm just gonna just my experience. I mean, I think it's a consensus of everybody's, but I'm just gonna go from my personal experience. Growing up, I really didn't see black male success out of sports and entertainment. So essentially, why I gravitated towards that because that was the only thing that I saw black men being successful in. So I thought I wanted the fame, I wanted the glory, I wanted the money. So this is what I need to pursue in order to do that. And I made it farther than 99.9% of people. But when make it to certain things, whether it's college, getting a D1 scholarship, or making it to the NFL, it's like you have fulfilled a dream, but it's anticlimactic. It's, oh, I made it, now what? And you bake it and you realize, hey, this ain't all what it was cracked up to be, or all what I thought it was. And you realize even too, and I'm not going to get into all this, essentially, you're just a piece of meat, you're a product. And essentially, what I tell my guys all the time is like, no, let nobody control whether you eat or not. And essentially, your life, your success is all in the hands of other people. If a person don't like you, if you twist your ankle on this certain day, if you bust your knee, like they're gonna get rid of you. It's gonna be the next guy. You're like a prize racehorse. Like they're gonna shoot you in the back and they're gonna get the next guy up. And so you realize that essentially no one really cares about you. You know what I'm saying? That's just what it is. Like no one cares. And you're on the hamster wheel. Everything is controlled by everybody else. You got to get up at certain. You got to do this. You like people are controlling you, uh, and you really have no say on the outcome. And no matter how you perform, it's just it is what it is. It's really the luck of the draw, to be honest. And when people are done, or when, because 9 times out of 10, football is done with you, or sports are done with you before you are done with the sport. And when it's done with you, you're left figuring out who you are outside of that, because you spend so much time, effort, and mental energy, and you really don't know what else you're passionate about. And for myself, it took me really, you know, if I'm gonna be honest, really, 5 to 7 years to figure out who I really was outside of that helmet.
I'm here in Mexico City at the Pave the Path Retreat 2024.
This first day has been amazing.
We tend to look for answers on the outside of ourselves, but a lot of our solutions to our problems are on the inside of us.
If I had to wrap this up in one word, I would use the word transformative.
One thing I learned day one is, I guess, be open to the applause when you have people that are on your side cheering you on.
Transformation is a process, so I don't expect us to get to a place where we're completely transformed. You should never be transformed. There should always be a transforming continually happening.
My relationship to love is that I believe love is something you have to conquer. So I always go for challenging people versus love is something that you find, or love is something that finds you, where then I would date the people who actually want to be with me and not the ones who are avoiding.
If you want to return home unrecognizable, make sure you are with us next year. You don't want to miss such a beautiful experience.
I've already been thinking of people that I want to run home and tell, and I'm excited to come back next year.
Position yourself to be poured into so that you can be served from your overflow, but make sure that who and what is pouring into you is pouring in life. It's pouring in empowerment. It's pouring in good, positive vibes, because you don't want to be filling and pouring and overflowing on serving the people you serve with a bunch of oil.
Y'all better come on this retreat.
So let's talk beyond the helmet. Very, very good segue into what was that experience like of discovering or coming to a place where you recognize this is my calling and this is my purpose and it's beyond what I've been doing.
Man, you know, one thing that they always say, "What's your plan B?" Right? And I said, once I was done with football, I'm gonna become a teacher and a coach. And I became a teacher and I became a coach, and I loved the kids. I loved what I was doing, but I wasn't having the impact that I felt I could have. And this actually kind of started the entrepreneurial journey. I knew that I was gifted at teaching. I knew I was gifted at coaching. I knew I was gifted at motivating. But I also saw that, like you said, right, all these young men who didn't have the ability that I have wanted to be, and I'm just waiting on this siren to.
Hey, we in Chicago. We can't expect too much.
uh, I saw all these young men that I knew wasn't going to make it to the NFL, but they act like they were going to make it, and they really put all their hopes and dreams. And people say, "Oh, don't crush kids' dreams." I don't agree with that. If you say you're in the NBA, you 5'4", and you're not that good, you need to give people some reality. It ain't
Exactly.
it. You here for something else. and it ain't to dunk a
They in the
basketball.
NBA.
Like you got to find it. I'm telling you, and I'm
But
not scared to hate.
that's the generation we have now. So my husband, of course, he has a nonprofit as well,
Mhm.
and he's mentoring the young men from the fourth grade
Yeah,
on up. And a lot of his young men, especially seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, you ask them what they want to be, and everybody wants to be a football player, everybody wants to be a rapper, everybody wants to be a basketball player. Everybody. That's it. But yet, these same boys are asking this question of when you ask them, what do you do on the weekends and what do you do after school? Oh, I just go home and play games. Oh, I just chill with my boys. Never once do you hear I'm on the court. Never once do you hear I'm in my room playing with beats or whatever the case may be. There's no commitment to it. There's no passion to it. All they know, all they see is money, fame, notoriety. Like that's all they see on social media, on TV. And that's all. I mean, they are tunnel vision. That's all they want to do. And my
yeah,
husband feels the same way that you do. You know, I mean, you playing football in school now, that's perfectly fine. It's just for fun, it's just for some exercise, but you ain't gonna make it.
yeah,
And he's one of those very, I'm gonna tell you the truth, I'm gonna bring you back down to reality. Because, like you mentioned much earlier, what we need to do with our generation today is give them the exposure that, look, there is a life beyond football, beyond NBA, and beyond rapping. Let me expose you to that. Um,
yeah.
it's interesting.
I get it. And what I realized when they say that, and you see those different things, what they're really saying is, I want to be successful. That's and
Mm,
but that's the only thing
that's all they know.
they know that is success. So if somebody says, "Yeah, I want to be this, I want to be this," and they don't see their actions aligning with what they want to say, I've realized that essentially they say, "I want to be successful," but I don't know what success looks like outside of rapping, playing football, or playing basketball. For
Mm,
me and people that look like me,
absolutely, especially when you have most of these boys who, like yourself back then, didn't have a father,
exactly.
so they didn't even see the husband of the home the family that you lived with in Skokie, who was successful businessman. They don't even have that as an example. They just have a mom who's hardworking and, of course, doing what very good single mothers do to take care of their family. That's all they see. And so you have men like you and my husband Destry, and I could name a bunch of other men who are in the thicket with these young people, to educate, to uh, expose them, to empower them to see more. Therefore, want to be more.
Yeah,
And so, as you were sharing with us your purpose, calling, experience, please continue.
yeah. So I realized that yes, I'm called to do this, but not in the traditional way in which you see it. Because people say, "Oh, you work with kids. Oh, you got to be a teacher," or "Oh, I want to coach," but you got to coach a sport. So, I actually took a year off, and I was just like, "God, what is it that you want to do?" And with me, like I gave up the teaching, I gave up the coaching. I was doing odd jobs, I was praying, I was reading a lot. And I'm just like, God, what is it, man? I don't know what it is, but it's something. And during that time, did some adjunct work. So I taught leadership development at a local university and sociology at a local community college. Eventually went into nonprofit where I was a program director, team program director, and just kind of fell into the Male Mobile Initiative. Um, just went to a career day, saw a problem, found a solution to that problem that I was passionate about, which was entrepreneurship and business, created a curriculum, got some funding for it, and what just turned into a summer program with 14 kids, has just blossomed to something I never would have even thought or dreamed about, to be honest with you. I wasn't looking for this. It kind of just happened, and I'm happy it did.
And so I'm hearing teacher, trainer, mentor, coach. Like I'm hearing all of this, but I also know, and something you haven't shared yet, that however, in your childhood, you also had a learning disability.
Yeah.
But yet, here I am now, and you're talking about creating curriculums and teaching at universities. Please tell us more about that learning disability and how that has not negatively impacted what it is that you are capable of doing now.
Yeah. So my mom says that when I was growing up, like some of the words I would say just it just wasn't sounding right. That language wasn't really I wasn't really properly developing. So she went and got me tested, and the diagnosis came back that I had an auditory. Back in the day, they called it auditory memory disorder. Right now, it's called auditory processing uh, disorder, and essentially the what I would hear and when I would try to essentially like reciprocate, especially when I was little, it just wasn't processing right in my brain. And shoot, at the age of probably 5, I had an IEP, which is a individual education plan, um, and that's essentially your special education. So, you're a special ed kid, and one thing I would credit to my mom and even the schools that I went to, that even when I was a special education student, I felt that I wasn't treated differently or I wasn't labeled or like expected less of. So I think one of the reasons why my mom moved from the south side to the suburbs was that I could have a better education and I can get the resources I needed, even if it took her working multiple jobs or being uncomfortable living in a certain surrounding she wasn't familiar with. If it would give me the resources that I needed um, in order to be successful. So I really, really appreciate that. I appreciate the teachers and the speech classes and all the stuff that I had to do in order to get right. And by the time I was in 8th grade, I actually tested out of special education classes. So um, it's like you never hear nobody really testing out of special education. That usually don't happen. But by the time I was in 8th grade, I was able to test out of special education. And currently, actually, my son is autistic, and it's something that runs in our family. There's some of the learning disabilities and autism. It runs in our family, and but like for me, it's not going to be an excuse for him. So he's going to be able to accomplish anything that he wants to accomplish and perform. It may take a little longer. It may take different. And even for myself, what this learning disability taught me was that um, it's going to take me longer. Like I'm still not a great test taker. I'm still, it takes me a while to process stuff. But what I learned was that it's not about kind of where you start is where you finish. And,
Mm,
I'm able to get my master's. I'm about to finish up my PhD. And I went from
no
a,
way.
a special education,
Congratulations.
thank you, from a special education student all the way to a PhD doctor. And, I have brothers and sisters, and I'm going to be honest with you, they're very naturally gifted and smarter than me, but
Mm,
none of them got as far as me because they weren't willing to work as hard as me. And the disability was actually a blessing because it taught me to work hard and to keep
mm.
going.
And so this is a great, great story. And I love the fact that you're able to be a great example to those men and women who have continued to hold on to the excuse that, well, I was born with this so called labeled disability of learning. And so I can't do this. I can't do that. I don't think I can do this perfectly. I don't think I'm worthy of this. I don't think no one will listen to me. And so there's this imposter syndrome that goes on in their mind. But here you are with a learning disability as a child. Yeah, you tested out of special ed at 8th grade. You could have very well held on to that, but at this very moment, you're about to complete and accomplish a whole PhD, and you have beat all the odds. You have not allowed it to be an excuse, and they get to hear, the men and women listening get to hear that, man, if he can do it, then definitely so can I. Or even to the parents who may have a special ed child, or a child who at the moment has a disability, can say, if he can do it, so can my child. There's some hope. There's some something to reach for and look for, but also even in purpose. Like there's no excuse why we cannot or should not be living out exactly who we were born to be and why. And here you are doing exactly that in spite of three things that could have held you back. Coming from a single parent home, living in Chicago, having a learning disability, and even going through your suicide. Like, I'm grateful for that moment that you had that encounter with God in that room. And you felt that hug, even though it wasn't a person hugging you. Nonetheless, it was the hug that still gives us Dr. Walter Mendenhall today. Let me put it out there already. Let me put it out there already. But I think I must congratulate you. Must congratulate you for the hard work that you've been doing and putting in. And now the young boys that you're mentoring, they just get to see it. Yeah, you may teach and you may train, you may coach them, but they get to watch it happen for you. And they get to say, if it happened for him, it could happen for me. Doesn't have to be the NFL, doesn't have to go according to society's norms and standards. It can happen for me a different way. And I love to say that purpose comes in all textures, shapes, colors, sizes. Like, it looks different for everybody. Everybody's story and journey isn't going to be the same. And for you, it definitely wasn't the same. And along the way, once, even when you came to your calling, Walter, would you say that it was easy?
It's the hardest thing I did.
Sorry.
It's harder. This is harder because what I had to do was leave the person I was to become the person that God had called me to be. And I think why the number one reason why people don't become all God intends them to become, because they don't want to be the person that God is calling them to be. Because you have to essentially shed and kill your old self to become the new self. And a lesson, even in my 39 years, about to be 40 in less than a year, I realized even as an athlete, what served me well for certain seasons in my life was now being a detriment. And for myself, anger was a motivator and driver. Oh, you say I can't do nothing, I'm gonna show you. Oh, my dad wasn't in my life. I'm gonna use that as fuel to drive me to be the best. You say I can't make it to the NFL. I'm gonna show, like, I realized, and you even talk about the best competitors, the Jordans, the Kobe's, and why they say they're better than LeBron it's the attitude, it's the anger. And even in this year of my life, I had to realize that what served me and motivated me to accomplish certain things was now being a liability as opposed to an asset. And now, instead of anger, I have to be motivated by love, because now it's not about being angry to accomplish something. Now it's about, how do I get these people to get to a certain level? How do I motivate? How do I love? How do I do all these things? When somebody spits in your face or slaps you, how do you turn the other cheek? You can't do that in anger. And I'm constantly, and even with the Male Mobile Initiative, I'm constantly growing, and I'm constantly having to, have faith. And what I've realized is that the more you accumulate, the more you realize you have no control over.
Ooh,
And I'm gonna
that's
say the
good.
more
Say that
you
again.
accumulate, whether it's money, whether it's influence, the less control you have over stuff,
That's true.
because you have to depend on other people, because you can't manage all
Exactly.
this stuff on your own. So you have essentially less control. And, that for me is a continually faith journey. I would say, going from, 100,000 to 1 million, like there's a certain faith you have to have, going from 1 million to 10, it's just different levels of faith, belief, especially when you're doing kingdom work and kingdom building, because essentially God gives you the vision, but he don't give you the finances with the vision. He gives you the vision, and you got to pursue it, and then the finances and everything will come. He doesn't give you everything, say go do this. He says, I need you to go do this, and I'll provide for you. And I love my son, and my son has really grown my faith, because I didn't know what childlike faith was until I had a son. And my son has so much faith. He knows if he thirsty, is always going to be juice. He knows if he's hungry, it's always going to be food. He don't care about what the bank account. He don't care about none of it. He like knows it's going to happen. And I'm an earthly father. Like how much better is our heavenly father than an earthly? So I'm just like, if I could do this for my son can have this much faith in me, man. I got to do better.
Imagine how much faith we can have in,
Yeah,
the God that created us, right?
so I
And
got to
so
do.
what I hear you saying is that purpose, especially pursuing your purpose, comes with a certain level of responsibility.
Yes.
And I think you actually started out with that very principle without saying it. You started out with people don't want to do what they have to do to actually walk in their purpose. They don't want to have to exchange one way of living and one way of thinking and one way of life for another. And so what I find is that also there are people who they have met their calling, they have uncovered what they're supposed to do. They kind of know what it is, but they have also chosen to say, I'm not going to pick it up. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it, because it does come with a level of responsibility. It does come with a level of sacrifice that they don't want to give up. They want to continue to be lazy.
Yeah.
And you are very, very, very right. Like there is even you transitioning from anger, which fueled you all the way up until that season in your life when you realize that I can't live in anger anymore. I can't let that be what's leading me. Now it has to be love. Even that, I can only imagine what the transition looked like. Like how was that changing from being this angry person for great reason, but now having to completely go the opposite way and say, okay, how can I let love lead?
No, that's funny. It's all borrowed by tragedy. So this year, these last 365 days have been tough. Had to bury two aunts, had to bury a father-in-law, a mother-in-law, and my wife's grandmother, and two friends of mine, all in 365 days. And one thing, and I always love my wife, and then I always kind of, Moses is always somebody. Moses didn't get to the promised land because of his anger. And, you know, one thing that, it's still, I get it, but it still hurts me that God didn't let Moses go to the promised land. Cause he like, man, he did all this, man. He had to tell, he couldn't let the brother get in. He just made one mistake. He just hit it. He just instead of, and I'm just, but I understand why, but it's still, it hurts me, because of his anger. And I was telling my wife just, Like I just my fallback, my default emotion is anger. And she's like, "Do you think that's good?" Like you said, like it's normal. And she said it in a way that like it made me realize like, is it normal? You know what I'm saying? Like, dang, I never really thought about it like that. I'm just angry. That's just it just is. And I don't have an overt, I'm a silent angry person. So I just, I'm not cussing people out or nothing like that. I'm just all, most of the time angry. And I had to start praying and asking God to just take this heart of stone and make it a heart of flesh and help me to be more compassionate, more loving. And what I realized was that there were certain things I was blocking for myself because I was always in anger. I couldn't love my wife the way she needed to be loved, especially in this season in our lives. I couldn't, have compassion for my son the way I need to have compassion. I couldn't guide these guys and these people and be the leader I needed to be because, I had this anger and I needed to get rid of it. And this is in the last 365 days. So it ain't like this I overcome this. I'm still working on it. And but I realized why I needed to let it go in order to get all that I needed to get.
And there is some normalcy to anger because anger in itself is an emotion, but at the foundation and the base of anger is love and desire. And so normally you find that when people are angry, they have actually gone through like six or seven other emotions, all because at the base of it, there was something they needed and wanted and loved that they didn't get. And so they go through the hurt and the pain, the regret and disappointment. And all of that then leads to anger. And so then you dial it all back and say, what is hurting you? What are you afraid of? What is it that you really want? And so your wife asked a really good question. And you think that's normal? Well, heck yeah, it is. It really, really is. However, where's that coming from? What is it that's what? Let's get to the core of the anger though. And it's interesting that the core at the base of anger is the very thing that you need to operate in now, and that's love. And that's love. And that's where we all operate in. But anger is so necessary in this form or in this way for purpose, right? What is it in your vision that makes you angry? What problem is it that you look at or that you see in the world and society and you're like, man, that irritates my soul? Like that anger is so necessary um, for purpose to really, really and truly like propel and catapult into you doing exactly what you're supposed to do. But then there's this operation of love. And I love how you talk about, being upset that Moses didn't make it. And I think we would probably all be upset that he didn't make it. But then you also have to think that purpose has very little to do with you. It has everything to do with the people that you're serving.
That's true. That's true. He got the people
So
there.
Moses' anger was going to affect every generation after him.
Yep.
And God is like, God probably thought too, oh man, I really want my boy to make it, but he gonna destroy it. I can't have him do that, you know?
I never
Like,
thought about it like that. That's good. That's good. Is
mm,
learn something today. I like that perspective.
it's the extension of the people that we're serving, which is why it's also imperative for you to, like you say, make that transition from being fueled by anger up to this point has served you well, but now you get to, be fueled and led by love. And I think it's an amazing thing now to now be able to love on your wife and love on your son, love on the men and boys that you serve, and then just love on the rest of the world and those who else you get to teach and train and lead. Um, where's the time gone, Walter? Where has our time
Yeah, yeah.
gone? I love when we have great conversations and the time just goes by, and we're also able to end on, this very nice note and principle of love. So if you can give those who are listening the best piece of advice right now, what would that be?
I tell my guys all the time, life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you respond to it. We can't control life. We can't control circumstances. We can't. Sometimes we cannot control our environments, but what we can control is how we respond. And the more you get into your word, the more you pray, the more you seek God, you become more like God. So you have God like responses. And when you have God like responses, the outcomes are a lot more favorable unto you.
That is great. Thank you so much. Walter, thank you so much for your transparency, your honesty, just for sharing part of your life and kind of who you are and what you've been through your journey. And I know that a lot of your lessons have not fallen on deaf ears or closed hearts. But I know that a life can, an individual can say, okay, I can apply this principle to my life today and get the transformation and breakthrough that I've needed to walk into my purpose boldly. So
Oh,
thank you very, very much.
thank
I
you.
love to end on one note that I appreciate, and I'm a big lover of food. I'm a foodie. Loved good food, love great food. Sometimes the mirror shows it. You can see it in my clothing sometimes. I don't care. Who cares? I'm living a life that's just beautiful. So, what is your favorite dish and favorite restaurant?
Oh man, that is a great question. There's so many different foods and options. Man, I would say, whoo, that's a great question. Oh man,
Just pick one. Pick one.
be honest with you, I love Lil Malnati's pizza.
Okay, Chicago's pizza.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I love Lil
I could dig
Malnati.
it. I could
I'm
dig
not
it.
a person, everybody got their favorite pizza, but I love
Hmm.
Lil Malnati's. I love the thin and deep dish pizza. I don't think it's nobody does it better than them.
Yes, yes, yes. So if you haven't visited Chicago, you must, and you must try the Illuminati. It's not getting paid for this. However, it's really, really good pizza.
Yeah.
Thank you all for sharing. Thank you all for listening. I hope that today you can take one thing, one gem, one piece of advice that'll change your life today. It's another great episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. I am your host, Charissa Monroe Realborn. And until next time, see you soon. Bye. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on this episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. I hope today's conversation lit a fire within you because purpose isn't just something you chase, it is something you live every single day. If this episode resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more people on their journey to purpose. Let's continue the journey together. Join the Purpose Finder community on Facebook for exclusive insights, tools, and a tribe of purpose-driven people just like you. And remember, the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Your purpose isn't far off. It's already within you. It's time for you to uncover it and live it boldly. Until next time, stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep walking in your purpose.